the bechamel sauce. We want to start with getting our pan hot. We're going to go again and start off with some olive oil. So you want to do about 2 or 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then we prepared our chopped onions over on the other side. We're going to add about 1.5 cups of diced onions. Now, if you remember correctly, we were working on the garlic also over there. Now, I advise to wait in the latter steps of what we're doing before you add the garlic because, number one, garlic has a high content of sugar in it. And if you know anything about caramelized or sugar or anything like that, it gets brown and it burns fast. Plus, it's chopped smaller. So you want to wait on that. What we want to do with this, we want to get a good toss on these onions. Now, just like a pro, I don't usually think about things like this, but a lot of people are like, well, I don't know how to flip and toss my pan. Maybe I should go over flipping and tossing a pan. All right, so it's real simple. It's just a slight little tip. You're using the curvature of the pan in order to basically allow this stuff to come up in the air. You're flipping it up in the air and you're just sticking the pan up underneath. Then sometimes it'll catch a flame and it starts flambeing. How do you do that? Well, stop trying to do all that stuff because if you're trying to be just like a pro, you don't have time for that. You want a good quality product. So if you don't want to flip your pan, take a spoon, stir the stuff up. But if you want to do this, it's real simple. So what we're trying to achieve here is what's called translucent. That's when you start to look at the onions and you can almost see through them. They're a little bit opaque. You can tell that you've changed the composition of the onion. So once we get this part right here started, then we want to go back into some of our other ingredients that we talked about before. Now we have the oil in the pan. We're going to go add a little butter to this now. That butter is good for flavor. A traditional bechamel sauce is made with just butter. But like I said, sometimes we're going to be creative and change things up a little bit. So we've added a little butter. The next thing we want to do is we want to add our flour to it. Because what we're trying to achieve at this point is a roux. We're trying to make sure that we have something here in order to make sure that we can thicken this process. We got the flour in the product because we want to put together a roux. So one thing we want to do is once we get the flour in, we want to try to get that flour to absorb the oil that we have in it. So we're going to mix this flour around in there a little bit and we're going to let that thing cook. We're starting to get a little caramelization to the onions. Nothing wrong with that. I like a little color in my bechamel sauce also. We'll add a little bit more flour to that. All right, so again, as I said, you got powder. Anytime you're making a roux, you want that powder to disappear. So you're using the oil content in whatever you're stirring up to get that out of there. So once you have that, now's a good time to add the garlic. So we have about a tablespoon of garlic here. Gonna add the garlic to it. And remember what I said about it being a high sugar content and being small, it'll burn really fast. So what you want to do is just get this mixed around in here. Now, the one thing that you're gaining when you're sauteing, using oil, when you're making a roux, the oil and whatever you add to it, be it peppers, onions, garlic, that disperses that flavor in the oil. And then everything you add to it at that point, it disperses back out into the sauce or whatever you're making. So now what we have is a really rich caramelized onion flavor and that garlic that we just put in there. And then any flour flavor that you may have is basically getting cooked out in the heat. So we're at a point now to where we got the roux going in a great spot. We got these tenderloins over here that we're going to pull out. And then we got our pasta that at this point, once again, we're going to pull this off, take it to the sink and get it set up so that we can chill that pasta down and then we'll have the product that we need. Now back on our roux right here, now's the time when we want to add our chicken stock, okay? So you add the chicken stock, and basically what's going to happen here is that flour that's in there, you're going to mix that around and that thing's going to thicken up for you, okay? It's real watery and liquidy once it goes in, but once you add that to it and you get that temperature going again, it's going to thicken that up. Then our next step after that is we're going to add the Parmesan cheese, and we're basically going to melt the Parmesan cheese into this phase. And then once we get that done, then we're going to add our cream to it. And that's going to make the sauce rich. It's going to give you that quality, that same thing you get when you go in these restaurants. And, you know, I would take this sauce any day because one thing, as I mentioned earlier, it's really about the creativity and being a culinary artist. Nothing should always be the same. Yeah, recipes are great to follow. You're going to get plenty of them with me when you're in my group. But the one thing you want to focus on is not worrying about making a mistake. You're going to learn some of these basic cooking processes so that you can keep everything in the ballpark. So you're not going to have to worry about, you know, crashing a dish, or even if you do crash a dish, we all got to learn sometimes. So it's nothing wrong with making a mistake. So as I mentioned before, you can see this roux is starting to thicken up. We've added our chicken stock here. We got some nice caramelized onions in there. We know we have some great fresh garlic flavor in there. Next thing we want to do is we're going to add our Parmesan cheese. So we have about a cup of Parmesan cheese. We're going to add that. And basically we're just going to blend this in and let that cheese melt. It's going to thicken up some more on us. And again, you got to be interactive. We're working on high heat. If you feel more comfortable turning it down at a certain point, you're just melting cheese now. So turn it down, turn it off, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But at this point, you just want to get that cheese incorporated in there and melted. So right now, look at what you have. You have a nice tan sauce. We're not finished yet because we're going to add the cream on the top, as they say. We got a good thickness there. We'll get our temperature back up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add about 2 cups of heavy cream. Now you can make this with milk. You can make it with half and half. But if you really want to make that professional bechamel / Alfredo sauce, use some heavy cream. So we got our cream in there now. Now heavy cream in itself, if you just set it on some heat and reduced it, it'll thicken up for you. But once you have that flavor dispersed from that good old olive oil, butter, caramelized onions, diced garlic, and that chicken stock, you're going to have a really nice, rich Alfredo bechamel sauce. And just so you're not confused, an Alfredo sauce is a derivative of that mother sauce, which is a bechamel sauce. So we basically got a finished product of the bechamel sauce, which once you add cheese to it, it makes it an Alfredo sauce. And what we want to do is we're going to turn this heat down on that. And we're going to let it reduce some. Then we want to take our bechamel sauce. I mean, that's a really good, rich sauce. You just want to take that, you want to lay that right across that turkey. Take a couple of good layers of that, lay it right across. Get a little bit on your pasta. Again, remember, people eat with their eyes, but they also eat with what they can smell. And this caramelized onion and the roasted garlic is just beaming off of this plate. So then we're going to finish it up with some garnish. Come over the top with some Parmesan cheese. Then we'll finish it up with a little parsley on top. Now, if you want to know what an Alfredo looks like at home as opposed to the restaurant, you got a quality meal right here. Okay? So we've just completed this. You tell me. That's why we're going to interact with this thing and make sure we're on the same page. But I think that looks just like a pro. All right. So again, hey, this is Chef Hank. Thank you guys for tuning into this. Remember, you can sign on to the page. We got some written content, some things where we can dialogue back and forth. And that's what we're here for. I'm here to make sure that you get an experience in the kitchen that you can enjoy, that you have fun, that you're creative, and that you can produce meals just like this, just like a pro. Let them eat.